Okay, good evening, friends. So, Happy New Year to all of you. Best wishes for 2021. I hope I am visible and audible to all of you. I think there is some problem. Okay, wait, I think there is some issue in guidance app, so please just wait 2-3 minutes. अभी ठीक हो गया क्या?
हाँ अब ठीक हो गया है, वो रिफ्रेश करने में।
ओके. Okay. So, as I said, good evening to all of you and Happy New Year. Best wishes for 2021. And as I posted in, I think I posted some message also at the eve of New Year. And there I said that so many people are saying that 2021 was the worst year of my life or their life. Might be true to some extent, but I am always of the view that you should not be using such extreme words. Worst is like you don't know. and even life is never without good and bads. There will always be good always associated with bad. So yes, one of the things which happened because of 2020 was that our classes went online, so that is a positive that came out. But otherwise also so many things, always bad things, I always feel they teach us more than the good things. They make us more strong. So it is up to you how you take 2020. And with respect to 2021, so many people are so much happy with respect to 21. We'll see at the end by December what will be the feelings. Will it be same or will it change? We'll see. Okay. So from that, let us come back to what we were doing. So as you know that settlement geography videos were uploaded in this meantime, and I hope that most of you have done the topic of settlement geography. So what we will do, one by one, we will take up the topics and I will be asking you if you have any queries with respect to what we have discussed. Okay, so I hope you understand what I am saying here. So one by one we'll take up the major topics and we'll try to answer them if you have any queries with respect to that. There is one topic I think which was not uploaded in the settlement geography, and that was about urban problems and planning. And except that topic, I think most of it was done. Yes or no? Almost all of the syllabus was covered. Tell me fast. There is only one topic which separately I have to take up, and that is the topic of urban problems and planning, and it is not so much difficult. We'll later talk about that. Okay, and there was one extra class also which was there, which is not directly mentioned in the syllabus, but if you would have attended that class, you would have seen that it was quite long enough. Class on post-urban geographies. देखा था? Have you seen that video? So in urbanization, this topic of post-urbanization is a very, very dominant theme in contemporary times. Most of, if you talk about, so much of studies have been done on this post-urbanization because it is visible everywhere. It is more visible in the developed world, particularly Americas. But it is not altogether absent in the developing countries. What we had studied there, you can see that even if you go in developing countries like India, you can see that similar type of phenomena is taking place. Okay, so one by one, let us begin. First, I'll ask you if you have any queries with respect to rural settlements. Sustainable development of cities, it is part of urban planning. As I said, urban planning topic is left. Slums is also part of the urban problems. So that is also left. So I told you that two main topics are left: urbanization problems and urban planning. Okay. So if you have any queries with respect to rural settlements, you can ask me now. So in rural settlements, as you know, number of things were covered. One was the type of rural settlements. Other which was covered was the pattern of rural settlement, and third thing which was covered was the morphology of rural settlements, and fourth thing which was covered was the environmental issues, environmental issues of rural settlements. ठीक है? So if you have any problems related with this, you can ask me now. कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है किसी को? Having a center mainly religious, can it be called specialization, which we study in towns? Yes, it is a kind of functional specialization, that is a special area. It has its role in the form of CBD, but it is not exactly the economic aspect which dominates in the if you talk about cities, the urban places. So the kind of economic structure that rural areas have, it is different from that of cities. But when it comes to respect to the functionality in rural areas, no doubt that the center, that central place, which can be a pond, which can be a well, which can be if you talk about a temple or panchayat house or any other socio-cultural structure, it clearly has that centrality, and it is one of the meeting ground of most of the villagers. Okay? So it is characterized by functionality, although we can definitely say high level of functionality, although we can say that it is not necessarily the economic functionality which is related with the cities. So in some manner it is similar, the difference is that of more of degree. Hope I am clear, Naman. Okay, here someone, Golu, is asking remedies of environmental issues. We'll talk about that in regional planning. So इसीलिए उसको वहाँ पर छोड़ दिया था मैंने. Basically, suppose if you have to write about remedies, what remedies you will talk about? What type of remedies you will be talking about? Can I say we saw that the problems that we talked about, the environmental problems or issues associated with rural settlements, we categorize them into the natural hazards which were occurring. So one type of remedies that you'll be studying in environmental geography that you can summarize is with respect to the natural hazards, how to deal with those natural hazards. And there again a combination of ecocentric and technocentric techniques would be doing. Like another was, for example, agriculture. So we know so many problems associated with agriculture, partly we can say byproduct of green revolution. And again you can talk about, suppose you have to give suggestions, remedies for that. Can I say that we can talk about the second green revolution that we are talking about as remedies? The organic farming component is part and parcel of that. Precision farming, etc., all those are part and parcel of that. In agriculture we'll see that integrated nutrient management, integrated pest management techniques. Okay, so ये सब आएगा आगे चल के. So that is why I didn't talk about that, because it would have just little bit more confused you. So many words would have been used. Okay, so every category problem will also have its own remedies. Can you understand what I am saying? ठीक है. Here ALS group Chandan is asking character of rural mean morphology. I didn't understand your question, Chandan, so please reframe your question again and ask me. Okay, so I saw most of you saying that there is no problem, so I am giving you one question. Think on this. And this question is, examine the role of morphology, morphology बोल रहा हूँ, physiography in determining the rural settlement types. In determining the rural settlement types. So again, like always, you have got 2 minutes to think, brainstorm what you will be writing, frame your answer. India perspective of world perspective, India perspective you think. अब ये सब कुछ मैं तुम्हें बता दूंगा तो फायदा क्या हुआ? Okay. So what all things that we need to write here? Very clearly, there would be an introduction. So introduction, you can write so many things, like for example, we can start with that physiography plays a dominant role in determining the characteristics of the site. 15 marks it is, I forgot. Characteristics of the site of rural settlement, and thus has major influence on rural settlement types. Okay, so this can be a good introduction with which you can start, and then you can move on to the main body. And here you can essentially mention like aspects of physiography like topography, climate, what else? Aspects of physiography like topography, climate, vegetation, natural hazards, etc. play important role in determining rural settlement types. देखो मेरा हाथ नहीं चल रहा है because I am writing after so many days and it is also cold. Okay, I knew that ऐसे फालतू के suggestions जरूर होंगे. Like here, Darshit is saying water. Pranav and Golu are saying soil. Okay, accepted. Soil you can separately mention. Darshit is again saying shelter. Amit is saying culture. Tell me, Amit, is culture part of physiography? Is culture part of physiography? No. Water, shelter factors tell me that aren't these factors would be covered under the headings of topography, climate, vegetation? Yes or no? Yes, you can mention drainage. You can mention drainage. I forgot to mention drainage. You can definitely mention. No doubt about that. Okay. So what you have to do, you'll take up first topography, and again here we have talked about what we will be writing in topography. Can I say in the videos you would have seen we have mentioned about Vidal, what he talked about the topography and the degree of ruggedness. Yes or no? So here you basically give the example of the Himalayas. So in the Himalayan region, what we find? Can I say in the Himalayan region, we do find that the settlements tend to be more from hamleted to which type? Hamleted to semi-compact. Hamleted to semi-compact settlements can be found. Okay, so again it is very clearly this kind of situation. We had given this similar example with respect to, if you remember, I think उसमें बुंदेलखंड का example दिया था मैंने. On the other hand, flat, according to Vidal, the case of flat and fertile topography, it is giving rise to what? Which type of settlements? It is giving rise to compact settlements. compact settlements. So you can give example. Similarly, you can give example of climate. If I give example of climate, can I say I can talk about the case of example of extreme climates? So tell me. Yes, Malwa is also an example. Bundelkhand, Malwa. Yes, I think मैंने क्लास में मालवा का एग्जाम्पल दिया था. Okay, extreme climates. We can give example of the case of desert. And what we saw in case of desert, the climate is very dry. And this type of dry settlements or dry type of climate, very dry type of climate gives rise to what? It gives rise to wet point settlements near oasis. And again, these wet point settlements are basically what? These wet point settlements are small but compact settlements can be found. So you give one example of one extreme type of climate. Similarly, you give example of the other. And if you remember, I gave the example of Himalayas. Particularly the upper slopes of the Himalayas, which are characterized by what? Very harsh winters, during which it is mainly what? Frozen. And we have seen that here we find the case of dispersed settlements. If you remember, I gave the example of Gadis and Bakadwals. And they have their summer huts, isolated summer huts which are located there. So you can give that example. Similarly, if you remember, I think vegetation का example मैंने नहीं दिया होगा. Vegetation example I think I didn't give, but you can give example of vegetation as well. So for example, tell me, can I say we can talk about what type of settlements would be rising in case of, for example, grasslands, where there is presence of grassland. And if grassland comes to mind, which part of India will come to my mind? One area which we have talked about is tropical steppe. And what was the name that we gave to this area? Anyone? Where is in India is tropical steppe found? It is found in, I am talking about grasslands where trees are less found. So don't talk about sholas. It is basically found in Rajasthan Bagar. I have talked about Rajasthan Bagar. It is basically what? It is a steppe land. It is a tropical steppe. And if you talk about in this Rajasthan Bagar, we find the settlements generally which are there, they are from semi-compact to hamleted. Semi-compact to hamleted settlement. So because these areas have their own carrying capacity, and according to the carrying capacity, the size of settlement is to be found. So here there is semi-compact to hamleted settlements. On the other hand, if you talk about the case of the forests, and particularly if I talk about the dense forests of India, like the case of your wet deciduous forest, for example. So here again what we will be finding, that the settlements would be ranging from hamleted to dispersed. Now these hamleted settlements are actually associated with the tribes. They are actually associated with the tribes of India, and depending upon in which stage of development the tribes are, they can be hamleted to semi-compact. But these are actually associated with the tribes of India. Dispersed settlements are actually the you can say the forest houses which are mostly belonging to the modern people like forest rangers. The forest officials which are working there, they also have their some residence place, not exactly permanent residence places, but such type of houses, single room or double room dwellings can be found within the forests. So that is basically giving rise to this, modernization has given rise to this kind of dispersed settlement. Okay. So again, that is the case of the vegetation. Okay. So you can understand now how to basically write. बहुत सारे examples हो जाएंगे, and the categories which are there. So like when you are talking about drainage. So in drainage you will talk about when there is river valleys, fertile river valleys, or other water bodies. What they will do, they will attract settlements, and settlements would generally tend to become compact near the water body. So there would be formation of what? Wet point settlements, compact settlements would be found. Okay. Although in these areas, in drainage हमने example भी दिया था, if you remember, we talked about the case of dispersed settlements also, where the dispersed settlements were to be found in the river valleys. Do you remember that we talked about in the Khadar region there would be presence of dispersed settlements? So वो दोनों लिख दिया वहां पर. Hazards we have talked about, the flood areas where the floods are coming, or you can talk about others like where there is the Tarai belt, where there is lots of mosquito proneness. Okay. So again, you can talk about that there the settlements would tend to be hamleted to semi-compact settlements would be found. Okay. So likewise, you take all these categories and mention them, and that is basically your answer. Now I am surprised because here no one asked me one question on rural houses. Rural houses था क्या वीडियो में? Yes, mergs are grasslands, but वहाँ पर the temporary settlements which are found in the mergs are less related with the grassland factor, more related with the climate factor. That is why we mentioned about that in the climate. अच्छा, rural houses था. Okay, then fine. I thought कि वीडियो में होगा नहीं शायद. So we are sure that the rural houses topic was there. Okay, very good. So this is basically related with the rural settlements, and as I said, it is the easiest part of settlement geography. Then the next topic that we, according to the schedule, we would have done, I think, was the topic of urban hierarchy. The topic of urban hierarchy. And if you talk about the topic of urban hierarchy, within urban hierarchy, there is topics like there was क्या क्या था इसमें, प्राइमेट सिटी, आई थिंक वी कवर्ड. We covered rank size rule and we covered the central place theory. Okay, so here ask your problems from these topics. Urban hierarchy was separate topic. Urban morphology was not part of this, yaar. If you are saying urban morphology, then समझ में क्या आया, फिर उसके बाद तुम्हें समझ में नहीं आया, that means RSR contradicts CPT. ये तो क्लास में उसमें करवाया था, आई थिंक इट वॉज देयर इन द क्लास. एक बार फिर से वीडियोस को देखो, बिकॉज एक्चुअली दिस टॉपिक इज सो मच कॉम्प्लिकेटेड. आई विल टेक अप सम ऑफ द क्वेश्चंस. सो वन ऑफ द क्वेश्चंस विच इज आस्क्ड इज लॉश CPT is confusing. It is. You cannot change that. See, the thing is, I hope I was clear in that if you talk about that of Christoller and Losch, we can say that Christoller idea is more like he is trying to create an ideal model, while Losch is trying to create a real world model. Now, when you try to create a model, why you are basically creating a model? Because the thing is that the reality is very, very complex. Okay, and if the reality is so much complex, then how to study that reality? Christoller answers this question by creating an ideal model. He sees that if suppose these conditions are present, then what will happen? This kind of ideal framework would be created. He talks about a kind of ideal framework. And this ideal framework he uses to compare the real worlds. Like he basically compares it with the southern Germany settlements. The problem is that in Christoller's theory, there is a basic assumption, a kind of assumption is taken, and this assumption is more related with the monofunctionality of the cities. He is just too much simplifying. Cities in the Christoller model tend to be more monofunctional because he is approaching, if you have studied, he is approaching the model or this study from the supply side point of view, that is the least cost approach point of view. And with respect to that, he sees that if suppose I am in a education industry, the way I will be making profit by cost cutting would be different from someone who would be making profit by cost cutting in manufacturing, or someone would be making cost cutting in transportation. or someone would be doing in marketing, making profit by cost cutting in marketing. So the principle of cost cutting would be different for different type of activities. And that is why in Christoller model, we get for marketing, we get K is equal to 3, K is equal to 4 and K is equal to 7 values we are getting. So why in marketing we are getting K is equal to 3? Because it is but obvious that with time, the lower order settlements which would be there, I think कुछ ऐसा ही है. The lower order settlements which are present, these lower order settlements will do what? They would become competing centers with respect to this settlement. Okay, all these lower order settlements would become competing centers with respect to this bigger settlement with time. ठीक है, with time, and as a result, the main criteria is to make sure what? That minimum number of lower order settlements come under the complementary area of the central place. So that even if there is competition, because Christoller sees that if same population is being served twice, thrice, then it leads to economic inefficiency. So what he does basically, he tries to make a model in marketing where ultimately there is the least number of lower order settlements are located within the boundary of the complementary area. Lowest number of such lower order centers, so that the competition in future would be less and thus inefficiency would be less, and that is why he gets the value of K is equal to 3. In transportation बिल्कुल अलग हो जाता है. I have explained this properly in the class, I think. So the main thing is, if there is these 3 points, one is we can go like this, other is we can go like this. Obviously the red one is the better method of joining them, because in this what will happen, the total infrastructure cost in completion would also be less, and also the everyday cost, fuel cost would also be least amount of distance would be covered, less amount of distance would be covered, and thus it is a more efficient way. So in transportation, he finds that half of the complementary area would be captured of the surrounding central places. In this scenario, what happens? The lower order central places, more number of central places would lie on the main transportation arteries, which would be formed. And thus you get the K is equal to 4. Administration may I have told you criteria is different, that the boundary should be very clearly defined. And thus he believes that it should be K is equal to 7, because all the full complementary area of the surrounding central places would be captured, and thus what will happen? It would become K is equal to 7. Okay. So for marketing the criteria is different, transportation criteria is different, administration the criteria is different. He could have taken more number of services and manufacturing. He just wanted to give an example. That is why he takes only 3 services, and he doesn't takes into account manufacturing, etc., other activities, only takes 3 examples and tries to explain his model. So although simplified, but it is not reality. For example, Delhi, I can put Delhi as a marketing town because lots of marketing is being done. It is also a very important transportation town. It is also a very, very important administrative town. So in real world, what we find, multifunctionality in the cities is more common than monofunctionality. And this was the main aspect problem which Losch found in Christoller model. Also, Losch has formulated his theory later. And when we are talking about later, it very clearly means by the time what has happened, the way a new economic order was slowly emerging. It didn't had emerged. It was slowly emerging, and in this new economic order, what was happening? Profit could also be very well be earned by ensuring maximum revenue. So we have already talked about that Losch approach was maximum revenue approach. And from these two perspectives, he ultimately creates his model. And he takes 150 goods and services, वो क्लास में हमने देखा था. And ultimately what he does, each of these goods and services have their own complementary area. He says that it is not necessary actually. In Christoller model, Christoller की hierarchy में, if you remember, we said that suppose there is this A, there is this B, but B is also performing A. That is why only it will be big. It has to be more efficient than C. So it is not only C, but it is B plus A as well. It is behaving as. So as you go upwards, what will happen? It is more common that the functionality with respect to same type of function would increase. It would also be behaving as lower order centers. But Losch says that means all others which would be located at this level of B would also be performing with respect to A. All others which are located at the level of C would also be behaving as B and A. Functions would also be there, but it is not necessary. Losch finds that the world was becoming more and more connected to each other as technology improved, and this connectivity was leading to what? It was leading to greater specialization. And depending upon that specialization, some cities can become as big as these without having to perform the other functions. So Losch is comparatively less rigid, and he says, which the question is being asked by Pranit, that on the same level of hierarchy there can be two types of cities. One type of city is that which is specialized towns, and the second is, you can simply call it as non-specialized. मैंने शायद वीडियो में उसको क्लैरिफाई कराया होगा. Yes or no? I think in the video we cut some words because उसमें multifunctional ऐसे कुछ करके लिखा हुआ था. So it is better to call them as non-specialized towns. ठीक है, so specialized towns and non-specialized towns. And we draw that, if you remember, we drew that diagram where we talked about different complementary area, because each service or good has its own complementary area depending upon its range. So suppose specialized is this, non-specialized is this. So he rotates at a center and ultimately finds that there is a possibility that sectors will be created where in one sector specialized towns would concentrate and in other sector non-specialized towns can concentrate, and thus he finds that there can be emergence of rural sectors or poor sectors, and there can be emergence of more rich sectors. So poor and rich sectors alternatively he finds. Mainly this is a result of the transportation arteries which are there. So the transportation arteries would attract more rich people. You know, when you want to buy land, if you are buying land near a roadways or any other transportation artery, the land would generally be costly. So what will happen? More rich people would be able to live there. Okay? So it is very simple. He takes into account other practical factors as well. So he takes into account that suppose here there is road which is there, suppose. So very clearly what will happen? Surrounding the road there would be more rich people here would be living. And in the other areas what will happen? More poor people will be living. As you move away from these transportation arteries, the demand of these areas would be less. Okay, so thus what will happen? The division of rich and poor sectors would be taking place. So देखो इतना जो समझ में आ गया लॉस्क तो इतना बहुत है. And if you really want to test yourself with respect to LOSC, you can understand that even if you ask, and this is a very important thing that I can tell you that most of the people who are teaching geography, especially in the field of civil services, teachers की बात कर रहा हूँ, students की नहीं, 99% of them will not be able to explain LOSC this much clearly. I was also a student. I have interacted with so many teachers and I very well know how much they understand about LOSC. ठीक है, सो इतना समझ में आ गया, that is enough. इससे ज़्यादा ज़रूरत नहीं है, because LOSC is really a complicated fellow and he tries to create a very real world type of model. And this real world, as you go towards reality, the complexity would be increasing. If we have to really actually understand this, then what we will have to do, we'll have to use the facts and figures which they have, use the calculations, the probabilities that they have calculated, then we'll be fully able to understand. But obviously we don't have that much of time and our targets are different. We are not doing research here. Okay? So that is basically the basic idea with respect to Christoller and LOSC. And उसमें मैंने वो वर्ल्ड सिटी वाला क्वेश्चन भी करवाया होगा. ठीक है, आरपी मिश्रा थ्योरी बाद में समझ में आएगा, अभी मत उसके पीछे पड़ो. रीजनल प्लानिंग में Pranit is asking, is it necessary that non-specialized towns to be multifunctional and vice versa? Again, I am reminding you, Pranit, the thing is that there was a reason why I said in the class to cut some words from the notes. And specifically, when we are using the word multifunctional, you reserve this word multifunctional for LOSC and monofunctional for Christoller. This is the first thing that you have to very clearly keep in mind. Now earlier when I was dictating, I was using this multifunctional word, but I found that this term multifunctional was creating lots of confusion in the mind of students. That is why from the next classes, I started to disuse this word. So better is you use specialized and non-specialized. In case of Christoller, no doubt, functionality is increasing as you go upwards in the hierarchy. Because as we saw here, as we are going upwards, the functionality increases but we are not calling it as multifunctionality because the functionality is with respect to same type of function. Okay, so functionality, for example, will increase with respect to marketing, with respect to transportation. ठीक है, सो क्लास में एग्जाम्पल दिया है, सपोज मार्केटिंग को लेते हैं. सो सपोज ए इज सेलिंग ग्रोसरीज, बी इज सेलिंग क्लोथ्स, सी इज सेलिंग ऑटोमोबाइल्स. So here it is only selling groceries because its threshold population is less, but as you go to B, threshold population becomes bigger, so it can sell clothes. But because so much infrastructure is created, so much other possibilities are there, so it would also sell groceries. Same thing, automobile plus clothes plus groceries. So see here what is happening. As you are going upwards, the functions are increasing. There is clearly greater functionality, but we are not calling it as multifunctionality, because when we are talking about multifunctionality, what we do, we use it with respect to type of functions, different type of functions. Okay, so functions can be divided into variety of categories. So marketing is one type of functions. And you can see here, all these, this is what? It is simply marketing function. ठीक है, I hope I am clear. I solved your doubt, Pranit. ठीक है, so reserve the word. Okay, I'll come to that. RSR. Just wait. Deepti here is asking how Christoller's CPT is suitable for agrarian landscape as mentioned in the criticism. So see, the thing we are talking about is in case of Christoller, we are finding that why it is basically suitable. There are a number of reasons for that. One important reason is that Christoller talks about the case of takes a case of city performing one type of function, and particularly this one type of function is more based upon services. Now if you look into the agrarian societies, can I say in agrarian societies there is presence of towns, of cities, but tell me what is the main functionality of these cities? Are these cities manufacturing towns? Tell me, Deepti. Are these cities manufacturing town? Obviously no, because in agrarian societies manufacturing mainly has not evolved. So if you go into the case of medieval period, we very clearly find that the main functionality of the cities tended to be of services and variety of services. One, either they were market towns or they used to be transport towns, or they used to be administrative towns. ठीक है, so he didn't include other important functions, particularly the industry, manufacturing functions. Can you understand now that criticism? Here Naman asked one question, comparison will always consist of differences, or can we talk similarities? Definitely, we have already talked about this, that comparison will always have similarities as well as differences. So what are the similarities between Christoller and Losch? Anyone? Yes, both are deductive model. There are so many similarities with respect to assumptions. Many of the in fact the primary concepts, the derivative concepts, the shape of the complementary area. Okay, so many things are same. So those things would be written as the similarities which are there. Both are definitely economic models. Based upon, they define efficiency as economic efficiency, no doubt about this. So many things wo to hai hai. Okay, coming back to one question was now asked, why RSR shows non-hierarchical nature. If you want to understand this, RSR, first of all you have to understand what is a hierarchy, or how is hierarchy traditionally defined. Okay, so how it is traditionally defined. So in case of traditional definition of hierarchy, what we find that there is, in hierarchy, there are levels at which the components are concentrated. Can you understand what I am saying? This is how traditionally hierarchy is defined. So there are levels in the hierarchy where the components are concentrated. So they tend to concentrate along a level. For example, you take the case of bureaucratic hierarchy, administrative hierarchy, political hierarchy. Can I say in each of them you will be finding that there are particular levels of hierarchy where functionaries tend to be concentrated, yes or no? Tell me. Because originally this term hierarchy comes from this administrative and political hierarchy. Okay, and generally in the hierarchy what we find that as we go upwards, the number of people located at each level or number of components located at each level reduce. Okay, so this is essentially the nature of hierarchy. RSR, ideally what we are getting in case of the rank size rule, we found that we were getting a kind of smooth curve like this. Do you remember? This is the ideal case of RSR. And in this ideal, why this becomes a kind of ideal? So here in RSR, ideally what happens? So this is the ideal rank size rule curve. So in this, if you look by the definition of hierarchy, traditional definition of hierarchy, what you find that the it is alleged that no hierarchy found. And why? Because there is continuous gradation of towns from top to bottom. There is continuous gradation of towns from top to bottom. Okay, so we know there is a first ranking city, there is a second ranking, there is a third ranking, there is a fourth ranking, fifth ranking, so like this. So there is a continuous gradation of towns is taking place here. Okay, and we have already said why this continuous gradation of towns is taking place, because in a way when we are talking, this is an example of CPT. This is how CPT hierarchy is to be found. So CPT only takes into account economic functionality. But when it comes to the rank size rule, rank size rule is broader with respect to functionality. So here what happens in this case, there is economic plus some special functions. Each city has its own speciality. Is also being performed. So for example, if suppose these two towns are there, okay, so here these two towns are there. So suppose one of these is, suppose this one is also a important religious center. This is the speciality of this town. So can I say, by being, because economically they are both same, but this one is performing an additional function, speciality of being also a religious center. So clearly what will happen, can I say that this would be located more here. It would become little bigger than this one. Can we say that? Yes or no? So this means that it will not be a kind of traditional hierarchy, but it would be like this kind of straight line. And that is why in rank size rule, ZIF ultimately achieves a smooth curve, because he also takes into account the special function which is being performed by each of the cities, each of the towns, and thus he gets this kind of smooth curve. But as we have seen that it is a more of a even more idealistic type of model, and in this idealism we can say that hardly any real world situations they fully correspond with the rank size rule. We saw that in rank size rule there is more presence of the binary models, stepped models of hierarchy are more to be found. So more or less they are talking about the same thing. They are finding a very similar type of situation. Okay? But however, if you take into account the case of the stepped hierarchy or hierarchy being a kind of the traditional way, then you can say that it finds that there is no hierarchy to be found, but there is a gradation, smooth gradation of towns which is found, and that is why we said that it is kind of contradictory. Other ways also we talked about, if you remember, how it was contradictory was with respect to the deductive, inductive aspects. Okay? So this is basically the difference that is there between the CPT and the rank size rule. More clearly we find that there is comparatively greater adherence to central place theory. This in developed world particularly, the stepped kind of hierarchies are more common. Okay? Yes, it is non-hierarchical as per traditional concept of hierarchy. But in a way we can very clearly see it is also hierarchical, because there is ranking of the cities. Okay? So that is with respect to this. Someone was asking about the concept of, I think, multi-primacy. So if you talk about multi-primacy, actually the thing about multi-primacy is the term multi-primacy was used with respect to some countries where there is no single dominating primate city. No single dominating primate city is to be found. And like for example हमने इंडिया में देखा है. So इंडिया में at top level there are 3 cities, and you know these cities are Mumbai, Delhi and Kolkata, which have whose population is near to each other. All other lie below that. So if you talk about, there are in India, it is said to be the case of multi-primacy. India displays more of a case of multi-primacy. Okay? So that is how the term has been used. You can continue to use the word multi-primacy, particularly when the questions related with primate city is being asked. Otherwise, a modern conception of this multi-primacy, उसको भी मैंने क्लास में समझाया, it has been replaced by what we call it as the phenomena of metropolization. I think I have explained this phenomena of metropolization. So the more modern terminology is that of metropolization. So you better use this when you are answering other questions. When you are answering the case of primate city questions, then you can use the term multi-primacy. There is no problem in that. Okay? And you know, multi-primacy is outcome of so many factors we have seen. Because of big size of India, size is a very, very determining factor which leads to multi-primacy. size, the cultural diversity, physiographic diversity, all these leads to the case of multi-primacy. ठीक है. More accurately, yes, multi-primacy is more accurately found in the southern India. ठीक है. I hope I am clear with this. Now coming to other question which is asked by Pranit here with respect to secondary cities. Yes, yaar, we are not saying that Pakistan has primacy. It also exhibits multi-primacy. There is no doubt. So that is why I use the word physiographic diversity, cultural diversity, size. There are several factors which can lead to multi-primacy. Okay. Secondary cities. Now the thing is, here what we are talking about, that hierarchy, when we are saying urban settlements, is very qualitative term, and it is not always you can say difficult or not always easy, to quantify. So it is not easy to, better word is globally quantify. Globally quantify. For example, tell me, can I say, if when we are saying in India a small town, can I say the definition of small town or the population size of small town of India will have differences with respect to the small towns of, suppose, Scandinavian countries? Yes or no? Arctic Canada. Okay, so it is not easy to quantify globally, and that is why several qualitative terms have been used to define the hierarchy. Okay, like for example, India में, if you talk about one criteria that we are using, it is the classes. So we are talking about, in India there is a class referred to as the metropolitan cities. Then there is rest of class 1. Class 1 cities are of two types. Then there is class 2, class 3, 4, class 5. ठीक है, and there is also one class 6 towns. So देखो, what we are here talking about is, now I can define this hierarchy in number of ways. So I am saying simply one nomenclature. So when we are saying one nomenclature, can I say that these would be referred to as the large cities. Large cities of India. ठीक है. Then these would be referred to as the medium cities or towns, and all of these rest would be referred to as the small cities or towns. So this is one criteria. ठीक है. But there can be other nomenclatures as well. Like for example, we have seen that even within this metropolitan cities, can I say that there are some which are growing very fast? Top 20, something like that. Have we seen them? Yes or no? So they are behaving as what? They are behaving as the primary growth pole of the country, where most of the development opportunities are concentrated. And because most of the development opportunities are concentrated there, their growth is taking place at very fast rate. So most of the people migrate from village. Suppose a person who is an agriculturist or a farm laborer, suppose, and he thinks that it is better to migrate to a city. Tell me, will he like to go and work in a smaller city like Gorakhpur, Jaunpur, or will he prefer to go to Delhi? He would obviously prefer to go to Delhi because Delhi provides more employment opportunities to that person. Okay? So such type of cities are basically what? They are the primary cities. Primary cities of India. Okay? Then below these primary cities is essentially a class which we call it as the secondary cities. And these secondary cities have what? They have the potential to become counter magnet cities. So they have the potential to become the rival growth poles if the necessary infrastructure development, etc., occurs in these cities. Because already they are big, already they have a kind of momentum. Why they are lacking? Because of the shadow influence of the primary cities, because of the lack of some development opportunities like infrastructure, etc., etc., lack of investment. But suppose government ultimately takes a concrete decision of urban reorganization and it feels that the primary cities have become overpopulated. So we need to do something because otherwise it would become so much unmanageable in future. You might have seen, today I went out, there is little rainfall in Delhi. There was little bit rainfall in Delhi, and what actually happened with that? So much traffic jam, so much you cannot imagine. So already the situation has reached to a point where there can be so much malfunctionings in the city. A little bit of problem and the system would break. So they are at the precipice of human disasters. already we are realizing the diminishing returns is operating in these cities. You can already see that when there was corona, how much difficult it became ultimately for us to manage the population in these big cities. It was very difficult for the government to provide facilities required to tackle this problem of COVID. So rather than going for these kind of highly centralized model, which we at present find in India, कितना परसेंट देखा था हमने? In the metropolitan cities, it was I think 43% something of the total urban population was living in 52 or 53 metropolitan cities. So rather than this kind of concentration, can I say it would be better if the population is becoming more centralized, decentralized, and see, because of the scarcity of resources, we cannot aim for same level of development for all the cities of India. We cannot provide the same level of infrastructure to all the cities of India. But can we at least do what? Can we choose some secondary cities? They can be 100, 200, 300. And can we improve the infrastructure and other facilities, urban facilities in these cities, so that they become bigger counter magnets? They are more able to attract population. Even suppose I am an investor and I want to invest, suppose, tell me, if a city provides me opportunity for investment and it shows to me that, see, we have developed this infrastructure, we have very good roads, you will get ultimately 24 hours electricity, we have good law and order, other facilities, all other urban amenities are very good. Can I say that definitely I would be attracted towards that city? And mostly the type of economy that is coming up, the type of functionalities that are coming up, can I say they are more technology oriented? Yes or no? Aren't they more technology oriented? And very clearly you see these technology oriented industries, when we talk about their personnel, the people who are working in these industries, what type of workers they are? What type of workers they are? Can I say mainly they are more sophisticated white collar workers? Yes or no? Yes, they are more skilled and mostly white collar workers. So they have their own kind of place imaginations. For them, a place has to have, because they are more educated, they are more, and our education is mostly Western education. So the kind of place, the kind of, if you remember that idea of Tuan, the kind of dream world, that dream place which resides in their mind is more akin to, more similar to the Western world cities, where the infrastructure is very well developed, the cities are more beautiful, clean. Okay? So developing such type of infrastructure, etc., it would be more easier done in fewer cities. It cannot be done with the type of resources we have. It would be very difficult to do it in all the cities. And that is why we are concentrating our effort into these secondary cities. And particularly you can understand that secondary cities, Thus, how secondary cities are so much important in context of urbanization of the developing world. Because developing world, very clearly we find that has a kind of multi-primacy or metropolization phenomena. Strong metropolization tendencies are found in the developing world. And it is not only the characteristic of India. It is characteristic of almost all of the developing world. Okay? And that is the basic reasoning behind these secondary cities. And definitely it is included as a part of our smart city project Amrut. They are targeting the secondary cities. Okay? And below that, all the cities would be referred to as the tertiary cities. Okay? So, can you understand this first nomenclature which we were doing here? This nomenclature is more with respect to functionality, more with respect to population size, when we are saying city is large, medium and small. Can you understand here the base? Here the basis of classification is more related with either population size or functionality. On the other hand, in the second classification, here the basis of classification is more related with practical utility, with respect to planning. Okay? So, I hope the concept of secondary cities is clear to you. And again, there is no specific population size with respect to which one we will be calling as primary, secondary or tertiary. For example, if you talk about in Himalayas, can I say the size of secondary cities would be different from the size which would be found in the Indo-Gangetic plains? Yes or no? For example, in the Indo-Gangetic plains, we'll call the cities like Lucknow, Allahabad, Kanpur as secondary cities. Okay? But in the Himalayan region, cities smaller than these, like Dehradun, would be referred to as what? Primary city of the region. Okay? Yes, Shimla in Himachal Pradesh can be called as the primary city. So again, it depends upon the particular geography of the area as well. So that is why we cannot give a particular size variable to these classification. Okay? So this is your this topic. Then we also talked about other topics like sphere of urban influence. Sphere of urban influence. Any doubts with respect to this topic? Yes, NCR, you can call it as an urban cluster. Okay, so sphere of influence में किसी को कोई डाउट नहीं है? वेरी गुड. So tell me, what is difference between a city region and zone of डोमिनेंस? कोई बता सकता है मुझे? ओके, सो आफ्टर समवन रोट नो डाउट, उसके बाद आंसर्स क्या क्या आते हैं? अर्लियर मोर मैक्रो दैन लेटर. ओके, सिटी रीजन विथ रेस्पेक्ट टू बाउंड्री. सिटी रीजन with means commuter zone. City region is physical boundary, but zone of dominance can even cross broad borders. Okay, there are two people who have better answered. City region is the highest order of function would be performed. Okay, more or less near city with highest order function. Clarity नहीं है. Here Rishendra is answering from the LS group. City region is the highest order zone of dominance. Very good, Rishendra. At least there is someone who has studied it well. And mind it, Rishendra didn't say that there is no doubt. ठीक है, Siddhant is also answering same. City region is zone of dominance with respect to highest order functionality. Very good, Siddhant. ठीक है, तुम लोगों का जो ओवर कॉन्फिडेंस है ये फालतू का है, जिसका कोई बेस नहीं है. दिस ओवर कॉन्फिडेंस इज वेरी सिमिलर टू द ओवर कॉन्फिडेंस डिस्प्लेड बाय कंगना रनावत ऑन ट्विटर. ठीक है, सो यू हैव टू डिसाइड, यू विल बी कंगना रनावत और अ बेटर पर्सन. ठीक है, so very clearly what is the difference? We have seen that when we are talking about the zone of, we can say that each function has its own zone of influence and zone of dominance. That means, in other words, a city has multiple zone of influences and dominances. ठीक है, but when we are talking about the city region, city region refers to the area which is bounded within the boundary of highest order zone of dominance of a city. Highest order zone of dominance of a city. ठीक है. एंड वी गेव दैट एग्जाम्पल, शायद क्लास में वाराणसी सिटी का था. आर.एल. सिंह, yes or no? Okay, so if you have understood this, tell me this statement is true or false. NCR is the city region of Delhi. This statement is true or false? This statement is very clearly false, because when we talk about the highest order function which is being performed by Delhi, it is administrative function. It is the capital of India, and with respect to that, its zone of dominance is the entire country. Okay, it is the entire country, not only NCR. We see today that there is farmers protest going on, and in this farmer protest, where all the farmers are coming from so much parts of India, whether it is Rajasthan, whether it is Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, now even they are coming from Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh. So very clearly the zone of dominance of Delhi is whole of India, the largest order zone of dominance. That means city region of Delhi is whole of India. ठीक है. So very clearly you have to understand here that important thing to note here is that NCR is an example of administrative, or what we call it as the planning region. Better you don't write administrative, सीधा planning region लिखो. Example of planning region. While if you talk about city region, when we are saying it is a type of functional region. ठीक है, डिफरेंस समझ में आ गया. सो दैट इज द होल आइडिया ऑफ स्फीयर ऑफ इन्फ्लुएंस. ठीक है, एंड मेनी ऑफ यू वर टॉकिंग अबाउट फिजिकल एस्पेक्ट. फर्स्ट definition of sphere of influence, I remember when I was explaining, I very clearly explained this, that it is a mental concept. Sphere of influence cannot be seen. ठीक है. मेथड ऑफ डिलिमिटेशन ऑफ स्फीयर ऑफ इन्फ्लुएंसेस मैं रीजनल प्लानिंग में करवा दूंगा, ठीक है, बिकॉज वी हैव टू टॉक अबाउट द डिलिमिटेशन ऑफ ईच ऑफ दीज रीजन्स. 3 तरह के रीजन्स होते हैं. वील टॉक अबाउट फॉर्मल रीजन्स, फंक्शनल रीजन्स एंड प्लानिंग रीजन्स. And there we have to specifically study the delimitation of each of the regions. So what we will be studying with respect to functional regions, same methods would be also used for delimitation of the sphere of influence. ठीक है, same methods would be utilized. So there we'll talk about polygon, thesan, etc. वो सब जो methods होते हैं, all those we have to talk about. So this was another topic. Then there was the topic of urban morphology. So if you have any questions related with this topic, urban morphology, you can ask me now. No questions? One of the very important topics, because this is where lots of changes are taking place particularly, and even in India we see most of the class 1 cities, they are undergoing fast changes in the morphology. Worldwide also we have seen the case of the post urbanization, postmodern urbanization, and again because of that fast changes in the morphology of the cities is undergoing. So because of that this topic is quite important, and हमने मेरे ख्याल से इसमें we talked about when we were talking about the world level. So we talked about all the models, most of the models we talked about. I think मैंने सारे ही models उसमें discuss किए होंगे. Practice profile of world urban morphology of different part of the world. Practical profile. I don't think, Shakti, they will be going for such specific question. They can just go for a type of question where it can be more related with, like, you can say that difference between the morphology of developed and developing countries cities. Okay, so they won't be specifically asking you that morphology of particularly, for example, South American cities or something like that. There is no indication that they would go to this level. But in India they can ask, because it is specifically mentioned in paper 2. So उसके लिए हमने already किया है class में. ठीक है, more or less we will be finding that the developing countries would adhere to the developing countries model. I think video में developing countries model मैंने बताया था. Yes or no? मटेरियल में भी शायद है. So 3 main model. If you look into the previous year papers from paper 1 point of view, you will be finding that from paper 1 point of view, there always the questions have been about the 3 models: concentric zone theory, sectoral theory, and multiple nuclei theory. And in morphology, they have never asked other questions related against this. Only question which has been asked is with respect to CBD separately पूछा गया. So changes in CBD भी हमने क्लास में videos में था. Okay, so this is mainly the questions which can be asked. Siddhant is asking, can questions be asked for Berkeley School? I don't think they would be going for such specific things. Like मैंने उसमें करवाया था पोस्ट मॉडर्न अर्बनाइजेशन वाले टॉपिक में. I have given you a brief idea of what is the Chicago school, what is the case of the Berkeley school. I have given you a brief idea. Berkeley school is basically the Los Angeles school. Okay, so I have given you a basic idea of what is the Chicago school, because there are two main schools, school of thoughts. So when you are talking about the Chicago school, you will mainly talk about the modern urbanization. And what was the difference? That in case of the Chicago school, we found that there is a kind of balance between the centripetal and centrifugal forces. On the other hand, we have found that in case of the Berkeley school, there is the centrifugal forces are much stronger than centripetal forces. Reason, because Chicago school mainly was formed during the modern period, 1930s, 40s, and even before. So that was the time during which it was formulated, and it was based upon more modern cities when such type of growth was not seen. The involvement of private sector, particularly in the cities, planning, construction, it was lesser. Still, the urban governance structures were strong, and they were mainly the planners. But in the new economic order that we see here, we find that private sector has emerged as a very, very important sector, and it is increasingly very active sector, and it is playing very wider role in defining the morphology of the city. Also, new kind of functions have emerged. Earlier, the Chicago school focuses upon it. They were mostly manufacturing centers, large manufacturing centers. But now we are finding that it is basically there is service cities have become much, much larger. Okay. So that is basically the difference between the Chicago and the Berkeley school. Shakti here is asking difference between morphology of administrative cities and industrial city of India in planned cities. See, mostly when we are talking about the planned cities take the same model of grid pattern. Okay, almost all the planned cities of India, you will be finding they are all based upon the grid pattern. And you take any planned city, like for example, you take the case of Bhilai. So Bhilai is basically what? It is industrial city which was planned. It is a planned industrial city. And you will be finding that Bhilai is very well planned with respect to the grid pattern. Another example, you take the case of Chandigarh. So Chandigarh is also based upon the grid pattern. The difference mainly is related with the site factor, the type of site on which they both are located. ठीक है. So that is basically the difference. Golu is asking driving force of changing urban morphology of million plus cities. Can I say कि sometimes we have to be just intelligent. Do you agree with me? And smart. Tell me. So don't you think कि ये question हम already कर चुके हैं in some other question? And who will tell me which was that question where we have already done this? He is asking the factors which are the reason for the changing morphology of the metropolitan cities, million plus cities. Where we have done that? No, Amit, it is not demographic transition, counter transition. It is not. Anyone else? Balveer is saying satellite towns, no. Some aspects we have discussed in satellite towns. Chippy is saying Indian urbanization. Can I say that we have done this under the topic of changing characteristic of the CBD? Yes or no? What else we were discussing when we were talking about the changing characteristics of the CBD? Significance of the CBD. Also, we talked about this in very much detailed in the phenomena, other phenomena, like for example, gentrification, postmodern urbanization. सभी में बात किया हमने. ठीक है. So sometimes the content would be not given. You have to create the content depending upon what you already have, and it is a more smart way. Suppose करो कि हर टॉपिक के लिए whatever I can think of, any question which I can think of, if I provide content for you, will that be a smart way for preparation, or it is better that I identify core questions through which I can answer all other type of questions, and I just mug up those core questions answers, core topics? Tell me, which is a more smart way? It is the second one, no doubt about that. Okay, so again, you just remember, and I again and again tell this to the students that when you have to answer the questions, just think in your mind that which topics, which content I can use here. After this mains would be done this year, you'll see that in few days I will come up with a comparison of the questions which I did in 500 plus and which came into the examination. Okay, and all those people who didn't come in contact with me, who have not studied, who have not been my student, and all those my students who didn't pay attention in the class, who didn't revise properly, all of them, you know what they will say? They will say कि सर देखो फालतू में कनेक्शंस ढूंढते हैं, सर का क्वेश्चन कुछ अलग है, द क्वेश्चन विच इज टॉक्ड अबाउट बाय सर इज वेरी डिफरेंट, एंड द क्वेश्चन विच केम इन द एग्जामिनेशन इज वेरी डिफरेंट. ठीक है. एंड आई हियर, बिकॉज दीज थिंग्स कम टू मी थ्रू स्टूडेंट्स कि उस टीचर ने ऐसा बोला और समवन सेइंग लाइक दिस. ऑल दीज थिंग्स कम टू माई ईयर्स through the students by themselves. And you know what I think in my mind? कि चूतिए हो तो चूतिए ही रहोगे. You cannot become smart. That is the only thing that comes to my mind. Because you cannot prepare for every question separately. Human mind has a limited capacity, and we don't also have so much of time. We have to improvise, and more or less अगर हम बनाएंगे इन सारे basic tools से, it would become a very very good answer. Even if it is provided to you separately, you will not be able to reach to that level of creativity which otherwise you will make. ठीक है. So keep this in mind when you are answering. अभी जो टेस्ट हुआ है, I think today they uploaded the answers. डिस्कशन वीडियो शायद अपलोड हुआ है टेस्ट का. Yes or no? So you will find that कि जो हमने क्लास में किया था, most of those of you who have written the test would know this, that most of even difficult looking questions could be answered just from what we had studied. It was all about organizing, using what you know. ठीक है. One question here has been asked by Chandan, and he asked, can Burgess model be on Chicago school? We can definitely say that here there is presence of Burgess model, there is sectoral model, and to some extent even the multiple nuclei model. Although we can say that multiple nuclei somewhere lies here. Somewhere lies here. ठीक है. And after that the एक्सप्लोसिव सिटी मॉडल, जैसे इसमें बर्कले स्कूल में रिफोर्ड का मैंने शायद क्लास में एक एक्सप्लोसिव सिटी के बारे में बताया होगा. ठीक है. सो दीज आर बेसिकली रिलेटेड विद द बर्कले स्कूल, बिकॉज द क्रक्स ऑफ बर्कले स्कूल क्या है? वाई हियर वी कैनॉट टॉक मोस्टली अबाउट मॉडल्स? Because if you remember, the crux of Berkeley School was that there is no fixed morphology of the city which can be theorized or modelized. Every city has its unique morphology. That was essentially the crux of the Berkeley School. ठीक है. So that is basically the question of urban morphology. Then other topic was functional classification. Here Yogesh is asking one question, उस पे मैं पहले बता देता हूँ. He is asking that urbanization process So I think there is one topic in our paper 2 syllabus, urbanization process. Are you asking with respect to that, Yogesh? Tell me. If you are asking with respect to that, we have already talked about, I think there was a video with respect to the urbanization process in India, how, yes, continent wise, how urbanization has progressed in India, how we saw that urbanization has progressed. Whatever aspects are left, the test discussion which has been uploaded, you see the test discussion and you will find there. शायद मैंने क्लास में, आई थिंक उस वीडियोस में वो वाला पार्ट नहीं होगा जिसमें आई हैव एक्सप्लेन द आर्यनाइजेशन, पर्शियनाइजेशन. Yes or no? Westernization, I think we did in the class. इसको भी किया था कि नहीं? The aspect of Aryanization, Persianization, and the, okay, so if we have did in the class, so that is basically all those are the perspectives which are there in the urbanization process. ठीक है, तो that is basically covered. Okay, functional classification, it was not so much difficult if you understand statistics. If you don't understand statistics properly, like me, then obviously there is no other way to just mug up. ठीक है, so I hope I am clear about this functional classification. There are two ways. If you understand the aspects, statistics, how, what is the aspects of statistics that we used, so वो बहुत easy हो जाएगा. If you don't understand, चुपचाप उसको याद कर लो. So two type of functional classifications are there: dominant function approach and multiple function approach. Again, if you look into the previous year questions, you will be finding straightforward questions have been asked from the multiple function approach. Like for example, the questions which has been asked is the Nielsen's multiple function approach or approach to functional classification. So that is one aspect. Others like haven't been asked, dominant function approach can be asked anytime. ठीक है, Chandan here is asking, in functional classification can we write answers without any names like C.D. Harris or Ashok Mitra? Why you will do so? These are prominent people. उन्होंने बेचारों ने इतना वर्क किया है, इतनी मेहनत करके they made ultimately functional classification. ठीक है, and उनको उनकी मेहनत का तुम फल भी नहीं दोगे. What is this? This is injustice. So please don't do that injustice. Just at least mention their names and talk about what is their basic classification. Yes, there will be little bit difficulty in remembering all. For example, in Harris, remembering the criteria will become more difficult because so many criteria are there. So don't remember that. जो मैंने दो basic criteria बताए थे, you just focus upon those two criteria. ठीक है. Yes, M.K. Jain is still used. The classification of M.K. Jain is still used by Planning Commission, Niti Aayog, which is now Niti Aayog क्या है? It is Planning Commission only. ठीक है. So that is basically the functional classification. And इसमें जो questions आते हैं more or less सीधे से होते हैं. One question which was asked, and अभी मैं इसको homework के लिए दे रहा हूँ. Tomorrow we'll do this question, and this is What was the question? Multifunctional cities or multifunctionality is more something like that. That is the question. Monofunctional towns are economically vulnerable. It was asked as a short note, if I remember correctly. Okay, we'll discuss this question tomorrow. So that is basically about the functional classification. Other topics which were there which have been covered, one topic I think which was covered was the case of urban sprawl. Urban sprawl. So again, in urban sprawl we talked about that what are the reasons of urban sprawl. Urban sprawl is more of a physical concept, and we saw that urban sprawl can be two types: American and European. So in European only there is mostly horizontal sprawl is dominant. In American there is vertical plus horizontal, both are there. Okay, and number of reasons can be there. Like for example, if you talk about urban sprawls, in India there are so many factors of urban sprawl. One factor is related with the factor of increasing population, the metropolization phenomena which is taking place, etc., etc. But there are several in India. जब इंडिया के context में बात करेंगे तो we can add also there are several administrative factors as well. Administrative factors are also there in case of India. Like for example, if you talk about the case of, I think ये भी एक क्वेश्चन था टेस्ट में. Was it this question about sprawl पे क्वेश्चन पूछा है क्या मैंने? Any of you who have given the test? किसी ने दिया अभी तक? सबकी बोलती बंद हो गई. Okay, so you'll be finding, I think there is one question on urban sprawl. Yes, 2B, I think. Yes. So there I have talked about what are the factors in India other than the factor of urban transition. So एक क्वेश्चन है उसमें, urban transition and sprawl को मैंने मिक्स करके एक क्वेश्चन बनाया. So there are several other, तो अभी मैं इसमें नहीं करवा रहा हूँ. There you'll find there are several administrative factors also there. So it is there in the discussion video. You'll see. Okay, so sprawl is one topic in which you'll be finding in the past 10 years 2 questions have been asked, because this is a phenomena which is taking place very very fast, particularly around the metropolitan cities of India. And sprawl का ही एक दूसरा form है, which is, I think, sprawl is given in paper 2, while the other one, that is rural urban fringe, is given in paper 1. Yes, there is one question. Shakti, you are correct. That question I am talking about. So those of you who plan to not give the test, at least be smart enough to look into the questions and the discussion. If you miss out, you'll be missing lots. And रूरल अर्बन फ्रिंज भी बहुत ईजी टॉपिक है. आई डोंट थिंक दैट देयर वुड बी टू मेनी क्वेश्चंस विद रिस्पेक्ट टू रूरल अर्बन फ्रिंज. इसमें द क्वेश्चंस कैन बी what are the characteristic of the rural urban fringe. So here the questions can be related with the characteristics, the various zones which are there, stages of development, delineation, problems and planning, ठीक है. सो आई थिंक ऑलमोस्ट मोस्ट ऑफ द एस्पेक्ट्स हमने इसमें कवर किए हैं. दिस पार्ट आई थिंक वी डिडंट कवर in the rural urban fringe, so that will be covering in the urban planning part. एक सेटलमेंट का डिस्कशन अभी और लूँगा, बट let us first start with economic geography, then we'll do that. ठीक है. So that is basically your rural urban fringe. Till when the test can be submitted, I have told you it is the last date is Sunday. 1 week extension was given to you. No, कोई एक्सटेंशन नहीं. ऑलरेडी 1 हफ्ते का एक्सटेंशन मिला हुआ है. इस बार मैंने एक्सटेंशन, सो मच एक्सटेंशन आई गेव दिस ईयर इन 500+ and test series that literally my whole test series is now like upside down. We provided some flexi tests. Because of that flexi test, what is happening? Suppose we are in the process of checking the modular test 4 or 5. Suddenly, because we have to give the copies within 10-12 days, so पता लगता है कि टेस्ट 1 की कॉपी आ गई, टेस्ट 2 की कॉपी आ गई. So it slows down the whole process of evaluation. ठीक है. So no extension to the test. Sunday is the last day when you can submit. ठीक है. So more or less this was basically your urban geography, settlement geography in fact. And you see that after we have studied, you must have realized that it is very, very interesting topic. It is not boring, at least, because so many things we see surrounding us, and we tend to now understand the logics behind what is the smart city, what is these projects are there, so many things happening around the city. We can better understand the logic of them now. ठीक है. So as I said, that what we have done in settlement geography plus the discussion of the test plus one topic, one more class I will be taking up on problems and planning. यार वो ऑफिस में पूछ लो, मुझे नहीं पता है कि ऑन विच चैनल दे आर कलेक्टिंग द टेस्ट. All these test results is वो सब ऑफिस में पूछो. I don't know exactly. ठीक है. So I'll stop for today. We'll meet tomorrow, and tomorrow we'll be starting with economic geography. So good night to all of you. We have to now again accelerate. And economic geography, as we have seen, that it is a very, very important topic. If you understand economic geography, half of, almost 1/4 of the topics are all related with economic geography. ठीक है.